Hey everyone, it's Thursday, so means it's time for another episode of T-Hawk's 2 Cents. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about papillions. So I sometimes am soldering intricate things just like all of us. We're soldering little tiny pieces, and you know when you put the flux on the solder, it can bounce around and do all kinds of weird things. And so when you're working on something a little bit more intricate, you don't have time to let your flux dry naturally, and you just want to get the show on the road. I make what are called papillions, and they're little balls of solder that stick to the end of your tweezers or solder pick and allow you to place it right where you want. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I use a papillion on this little starburst. These are things that I make in my shop every once in a while, and you can see right here, right there, there's a little tiny joint that I have to get a piece of solder on. And what I'm going to do is show you how I make a papillion so that I can stick it just to that joint so that the solder snippet's not just bouncing everywhere. So you're going to need a couple of things for this. You're going to need your flux in whatever container you use it in. You're also going to either need a pair of tweezers, or you can use a old welding rod. You can use the end right here, or you can use a solder pick. So whichever one you want. My solder pick is old and used and abused, so I'm going to probably use my tweezers, but you'll need one of these three things. Okay, so we have our joint flux, and then we have our little tiny snippet of solder right there. Right there. And what we're gonna do to make a papillion, you're gonna turn on your torch like this. You're gonna apply heat to that piece of solder until it balls up. It just balled up right there. But while it still looks wet, basically what you do is you pick it up with your tweezer like so. So once your solder starts to look wet and it balls up, you put either your solder pick, your tweezer, or your welding rod up to it, and it will stick right to the end of whatever implement you're using. So then what you do is you go through and you heat the piece up that you want to solder. In this case, we're going to heat this little guy up evenly all the way around. And once we start getting close, we're going to put that little snippet of solder right there, and boom, you were just able to let go of your solder. It sucked right onto the metal, and your papillion basically kept it easier for you to work. So on pieces like this that are a little bit trickier and you need a little bit more control, when you make the papillion and you pick it up on the end of your tweezer or whatever, and then you heat this up, once you put the tweezer and the papillion right up next to where your joint is, and your joint is hot enough, that solder just sucks right down in there, and so it allows you to evenly place your solder exactly where you want it to go. So when I first learned how to make papillions, it took me a couple of times before I really figured out how hot to get it, when to pick it up properly. I just have found that like once the solder kind of looks wet, that's the best time to like scoop it up off the solder block. But other than that, it's a really helpful tool for when you're trying to get into a tight spot and you only need one little piece of solder there. So if you found this tip helpful, let me know. If there's another tip that you're looking for, definitely type it in the comments or DM me, and I will try to make a video on it if I know how to do it. But other than that, the papillion is really helpful. Practice using it because it comes in handy, especially when you're working on those more intricate projects. So I hope that you guys found this helpful, and I will see you all soon for the next T-Hawk's 2 Cents.